What's up, everyone? Good Tuesday morning to all of you. I am Emerson Lotzia, hosting The Sweat, presented by DraftKings. We do this show Monday through Friday, 11 a.m. Eastern time to high noon Eastern time. DFS and sports betting galore for the next hour. We're going to be around the NBA, the NHL, the PGA Tour, but we will start in the NFL, where 8 teams are left in the hunt for a Super Bowl title. Let's overreact to Wild Card Weekend, shall we? With 2 of our favorite wild card analysts, DraftKings contributors Pierce Dietrich and Steve Buchanan. Peace be with you as well, Steven. So after the way the Bills dominated the Patriots, their plus 500 odds to win the Super Bowl in the DK Sportsbook is a good bet right now. Overreaction, Steve?
You know what? It's not an overreaction for all of our new customers over in New York. We are so happy to have you here. Because you know what? It gives them something to root for. But we're in the market of making money. So if I'm in the market to be making money, I'm not betting the Bills at plus 500 to win the Super Bowl. The winner of the Super Bowl is coming from the NFC. That division, that conference, is absolutely stacked with who we have left. We have the Buccaneers that are left. We have the Packers that are left. I mean, the Rams too. Those are 3 really tough teams that you're gonna beat. Get the Rams at plus 750. They absolutely dominated the Cardinals last night. Shouldn't be a surprise. Cliff Kingsbury can't coach a game once it's past game 7. The stats back that up. I just think that the Super Bowl winner is going to come out of the NFC. So, it's fine. The Bills look great against the Patriots, but they should have looked good against the Patriots. That team was atrocious against anybody over 500 this season. So does it make sense to bet them because of how good they look? Yes. But I think that was an easy win for them. I think they're going to struggle in this week against the Chiefs.
Hey, Pierce, at plus 500 odds to win the Super Bowl, the Bills are a good bet right now. Is that an overreaction? Third best odds on the board.
It's an overreaction, but I like the bet. Ultimately, I'd like to take Green Bay, but the return's just not that good, so I will settle for Buffalo. And yeah, Steve's right. They did beat a New England team that may have been overhyped a little bit, and they should struggle a little bit this week. But as we've mentioned before, this team was specifically built to beat a type like Kansas City, to win a shootout. We saw them win 38-20 against Kansas City in October. Now, Kansas City's defense has improved a lot since then, but Buffalo's offense is starting to look really good again. We know Allen and Diggs are both top-tier players. We know now that Knox looks like he's going to be a top-tier tight end. Beasley and Sanders are great supporting receivers, but the real surprise has been Devin Singletary. We've been waiting for this guy to come along for years, and now he's starting to emerge. If he can be just an average to above average running back, they should get past Kansas City. They should make it through the AFC. Now all bets are off when they have to face the Packers or the Buccaneers in the Super Bowl, but you like the return that you're going to get, and you like the chances of at least getting to the Super Bowl and having a chance to help you win money.
Okay, let's talk about a couple teams here that have longer odds to win the Super Bowl than the Bills. So the Bucs plus 550, the Rams plus 750. And after making it look easy against the Eagles, you got Brady and the Bucs. They will beat the Rams and cover the 3-point spread, sending the GOAT to his 15th conference championship game. Pierce, overreaction?
I think it's an overreaction to assume that it's going to be easy. Ultimately, I think they will win this game. Both teams had some pretty soft matchups last week. I don't want to overreact to that. But there are concerns with the Buccaneers. Keyshawn Vaughn and Giovanni Bernard look good against the Eagles, but now they got to face a top 5 rush defense. It's not going to be that easy. They lost a first team All-Pro tackle last week. If he is out, it's going to be even that much more of a challenge. We've seen Brady and Gronk and Evans play pretty well, but they're really going to have to step it up if Fournette and Jones are not back in this game. And you look on the other side, though, the Rams lost Andrew Whitworth, and he is pretty much the backbone, the support of that team. If he is out, then I definitely will feel a lot more comfortable taking Tampa to cover this game.
Yeah, Steve, this could not have played out much worse for the Bucs because the Rams have beat them twice over the past couple seasons. We all know the way to disrupt Tom Brady is to get pressure on him up the middle, and they have Aaron Donald to do that.
No, that's exactly the point I was going to bring up, too. In that game against the Eagles, we just saw on Wild Card Weekend, Brady was only under pressure on 14% of his dropbacks. He had all day to throw against that team. Now he's going to be facing one of the most disruptive, pass rushes in the league going up against the Rams. Now, to be fair, When they faced him earlier this year, Brady threw for over 400 yards in that game, absolutely decimated this team. This is a different looking Rams team than when they saw back in week 3. That's going to be the biggest difference for me here. If they can get pressure on Tom Brady, that's where it gets a little dicey for the Bucs. I think the Bucs still squeak one out of here. This is a low spread, obviously. I think it's going to be one of those type of games. I do think the Bucs squeak by in this one, but this is not going to be the cakewalk they just had against the Eagles.
And the Rams offense just needs to play its part because the Eagles had a horrible offensive game plan against the Bucs and really were never in it. How about the 49ers here, though, guys? They were the underdog, the only underdog to win over the weekend. They've got a legitimate chance to knock off the well-rested Packers on the road, Steve. Is that an overreaction?
Oh, man, the Packers, to me, feel like one of the more complete teams in the league at this point. They got a good secondary. They got a good ground game. They got, capable receivers, just really Devontae Adams, but apparently that's all they need. The problem is if the 49ers fall behind, that's where it gets really dicey, right? Because even Jimmy Garoppolo, in that game, they won 23-7, only threw for 172 yards, no touchdowns, an interception in that game. If you need to come from behind, Jimmy Garoppolo is not the guy that is going to do that magic for you. That's where the biggest discrepancy comes for me here. Now you got all the rest for the Packers. They're going to come to this game healthy in their elements. I mean, come on. I mean, everything just points to the Packers in this game. I don't think the 49ers stand much of a chance.
Yeah, Pierce, the health of Nick Bosa is going to be crucial in this matchup too, because without him getting pressure on Rodgers could pick apart that secondary, which is the weakest part of that defense.
Well, even with a healthy Bosa, I don't believe that the 49ers have much of a chance. It's complete overreaction. And just as Steve said, everything points in the direction of the Packers winning this game. Everything went wrong for Dallas last week, and Dallas still almost won that game. So San Francisco is going to need everything to go wrong for Green Bay at Green Bay. And even then, I could still see Green Bay winning this game. They are well rested. They had a bye week. They basically didn't play the last week of the season either. San Francisco is a top 10 team. They have a good defense. They have a top 10 offensive line, but they're not a top 5 team. They're not going to be one of the final 4 teams. We're going to be reminded this week that Green Bay is the best team in the NFL. They are complete, just like Steve said. And I just don't see how San Francisco is going to stay in this game at all.
Yeah, 49ers offense, speaking of that, like their run game could be the key to success here just with the Packers. I'm looking at it here. 3rd worst team in the league in rushing yards allowed per game. Speaking of rushing yards, I mean, Derrick Henry will be able to start racking up some of those now as he returns to the Titans. He's missed most of the season with an injury. He will be back in action. The Titans will be hosting the Bengals, who won their first playoff game since 1991. Another huge game from Jamar Chase here, dudes. The rookie will put up another 100-yard contest and lead the Bengals to a victory in Tennessee. Is that an overreaction, Pierce?
No, not at all. Chase will continue to get the ball. That's what the Cincinnati Bengals are doing. Last week, Steve and I disagreed. It was a great spot for Joe Mixon. He should have run all over Las Vegas, but the Bengals have changed gears. They have committed to the passing game, and I imagine they're going to keep doing that against a pass defense that can be attacked in Tennessee. I know on paper their pass DVOA looks pretty good, but they've played a pretty weak schedule, and they've given up yards to some inferior quarterbacks. Trevor Siemian threw for almost 300 yards and 2 touchdowns in a win. The last week of the season, Davis Mills, 300 yards and 3 touchdowns. Joe Burrow should easily be able to pass on this team. And you look at what Tennessee does: 24th in yards allowed, 22nd in air yards, 23rd in yards after the catch. All 3 of those statistics add up to Chase going well over 100 in this matchup.
And Steve, there's a good chance Henry could be a little rusty here, which would probably help the Bengals have a better chance at knocking him off.
And not only that, it's not like the Bengals have a bad run defense. They've been pretty solid in that aspect. And look, nothing is going to stop Derrick Henry at the end of the day, okay? So let's not overreact to that. But at least it's a tough matchup for him to get back into the groove in. And then just talking about that Tennessee secondary, they allowed the 2nd most receiving yards to opposing wide receivers during the regular season, an average of 188 per game. We could see that from Chase alone. Maybe it's a little bit of an overreaction, but it's not out of the question to say that Chase is going to go for over 100 yards in this game. He is just so unbelievable the way he can adjust, get downfield. The yards after the catch have been phenomenal all season long. But not only that, if it's not Chase, Burrow just has so many options he can go to. Like Uzama was a huge part of that game last week. He was phenomenal. And he's like fifth in the pecking order when you factor in all the people that can catch the ball in this offense. I don't see how Tennessee is going to win this game. I love that the Bengals are underdogs in this one. One of my favorite plays on the board, but I think this is just another huge day for Jamar Chase.
Gentlemen, let's name this week's Super Fantasy Player of the Week presented by Supercuts. With nearly 42 DK fantasy points against New England, Bills quarterback Josh Allen is the Super Fantasy Player of the Week. North of 300 passing yards, 66 more on the ground, and 5 total touchdowns, beating out Patrick Mahomes by less than a point. What are the chances Allen can repeat this week, beating out Mahomes in a head-to-head matchup and winning back-to-back Super Fantasy Player of the Week awards, Steve?
Yeah, look, if anybody has the upside, obviously Josh Allen is one of those guys. With that said, I don't think it can be stated enough how improved this Chiefs secondary has been during the second half of the season. And then we saw what Mahomes did, right? After going down 7-0 in that game to the Steelers, then he threw for 19 touchdowns in 5 minutes. That's what it felt like, right? It was unbelievable, the performance that he put on. And that's even with some of his key players not exactly being involved in those scoring opportunities. So I think Allen's going to be in a tough spot this week against the Chiefs. This is one of the highest scoring games projected on the slate, but I think Mahomes would end up taking this spot if it came down to the two of them.
Pierce, do you expect Allen to win back-to-back Super Fantasy Player of the Week awards?
Yeah, I expect him to do it, but not in the same manner. He is not going to be as efficient. The Kansas City defense has really improved a lot. They are 6th in pressure rate, but they're only 29th when it comes to sacking the opposing quarterback, which means they're probably going to apply pressure to Allen, and Allen's going to run the ball. I would not be surprised to see him do better than 66 yards, go over 100 yards rushing. And this is something he's dealt with all season long. His pressure rate's been north of 25% this season. That's the bottom 10 in the league. And still, he was able to throw for 4,400 yards, 36 touchdowns. I think he's going to deal with pressure. I don't believe he'll be as efficient, but they'll move the ball. They'll get the ball in the end zone. And more importantly, he's going to run a lot.
Yep. Buffalo has the players on both sides of the ball to frustrate the Chiefs. They feel like the more well-rounded team this time around. Gentlemen, fantastic job, or super job, as I should say. We'll look at some of the divisional round lines and odds coming up. But first, it's NHL opening face-off right after this break. We are back, and so is the NHL with a loaded Tuesday slate, and here to help you build money-making lineups, hopefully, or NHL.com Fantasy on Ice podcast host, Pete Jensen here, RotoWire's Paul Bruno. Guys, the value pool continues to shrink more and more with each day. It's getting harder and harder to really stack all the studs. So which one are you going with at center tonight, Pete?
I'm going with Elias Pettersson. He had his best game of the season the other day. He normally plays center. He's moved to the wing a little bit under Bruce Boudreau, so something to keep an eye out for there in terms of which position you can roster him. But he's only 4,700, and he's playing Nashville, who's allowed 12 goals, 4 in each of their past 3 games. So, yeah, I think that the Pettersson wrinkle is real. He definitely has a much higher ceiling considering his career points per game average. He's only averaging a half a point per game this season, but his career points per game average is over 0.8. So very high ceiling down the road, and especially now that he's finally ignited for them, and they're trying to finish off their road trip with a bang here. So I like Pedersen. I'm working him into my lineup, regardless of what position he plays these days.
All right, Paul, you spending some big cash here.
No, I'm not. The game of the night certainly features the top two centers when Carolina meets Boston, and I think they're going to cancel each other out. I'm talking about Aho and Bergeron. Instead, I'm looking at a trio of other guys. I'm considering Rupe Hintz for $7,200. His Dallas club rolls out the welcome mat for the league's worst team as Montreal comes to town on the second of their back-to-backs in their current road trip. Hintz is centering the Stars' top line, has 9 points in his last 10 games. Braden Point for $6,900. You won't see that price tag very often this season. He faces LA on the road this evening after compiling 8 points in his last 6 games, boosted by the return of line mate Nikita Kucherov. The Kings are on the second of back-to-backs after getting waxed last night against San Jose. And then finally, Matthew Barzal for $6,400 is a compelling third option I consider at center today because he's got a favorable matchup against the Flyers club that may be considering a fire sale in a few weeks as they're on a current 8-game losing streak. Barzal has led the club, the Islanders that is, to a 6-3-1 mark with 13 points in his last 10 games played.
All right, let's make our way to the wings and things department here. I'm pulling up the salaries. Oh, not a shocker there. OV atop, Brad Marchand, $8,500, $200 cheaper. Who is the best option at wing tonight, Paul?
You know what, I called for fading Bergeron, but I might play Marchand tonight, Emerson, because he's the hottest player in the league right now with 10 goals and 18 points in his last 10 games and really rises to the occasion when the stage is the biggest. And I already implied we got the game of the night there tonight. He cost $8,500. I also mentioned Kucherov earlier, and he's got 9 points in only 5 games since his return to lineup. He's a proven top scorer in this league and costs only $7,900. And then finally, Joe Pavelski has the best matchup of the 3 high-price wingers that I'm going to mention. Again, facing the cellar-dwelling Montreal Canadiens. I can't say that often enough. Costing $7,200. He also comes in on a roll with a whopping 15 points in his last 10 games played.
All right, Pete, where are you going here at winger?
Paul mentioned Nikita Kucherov. He leads the NHL right now in points per game. He's only played 8 games, but he's got 13 points. So he's a lineup lock for me. He's going to be playing with Andre Palat banged up. He's playing with his usual line mate, Braden Point, and also Corey Perry's getting a look there. So maybe that's a low ownership stack of Kucherov with Corey Perry to get some exposure to the Tampa Bay Lightning, who are facing the LA Kings. If you're not aware, the LA Kings gave up 5 goals to Timo Meier yesterday to one player. First time that's happened in the league since 2020 when Zibanejad did it. So if Timo Meier, who's a great player in his own right, is going to drop 5 goals on the LA Kings, what is Nikita Kucherov going to do against them with LA being on the second of a back-to-back? Something to look at here in terms of ceiling and slate breaker. So I would get Nikita Kucherov into my lineup.
All right, let's make our way back to the blue line, gentlemen. Who's your favorite defenseman at the top of the salary board here, Pete? One north of $8,000. You going that high?
I like Roman Josi a lot. I mean, it's a lot to spend for a defenseman, but when you look at the high floor, the high ceiling, he's a Norris Trophy contender. He's worth the price of admission for the Predators who are playing Vancouver. Vancouver's had an up and down road trip, so I'm not against spending up for that. I do think like Mackenzie Weegar is probably the best bang for your buck, considering how safe of a bet Florida has been in terms of, fantasy value and covering spreads and things like that. And I mean, that team is just a total beast right now. One of the best teams in the entire league. They face Calgary on the road, so they're taking their great home play to the road. But yeah, Mackenzie Weegar plays with Aaron Ekblad at even strength. You don't have to stack him with Ekblad because that'll cost a lot, but you can get him into your lineup. He'll bring the points that Ekblad brings, and he'll get you some good category coverage in the process with blocks and shots and things like that.
All right, Paul, who are you looking at for your blue line potato chip tonight?
I am in lockstep with Pete. I think Roman Josi's a good play if you can fit him in there. Certainly, guy's leading all defensemen scoring over the last 10 games and one of the top candidates for Norris Trophy honors on the season year to date. And then with the high octane offense of the Panthers that Pete mentioned, I might even look at Aaron Ekblad. considering he's got 11 points his last 10 games, 35 points and 37 on the year. His career best season is ongoing right now. He cost $6,500 against a Calgary club that is leaking defensively, having given up 20 goals against in their current 4-game losing streak. And finally, Ottawa's Thomas Shabbat. We don't show a lot of love for low-end teams too often on the show, but I'm going to mention Thomas Shabbat playing his best hockey of the season with 10 points in his last 10 games played. And tonight we'll face a Buffalo club that is giving Michael Hauser his season debut as they search for answers in net. Shabbat will cost you $6,200.
All right, Paul, this is typically when you really shine too. Hook me up with the best value play. Who's the best value play to fit all of these great plays we've talked about into your DFS lineup tonight?
Have you noticed that AJ's been away for a while?
You know what? Actually, I'm glad you mentioned that because I saw the other day on Twitter, I think he tweeted out a pic of himself in Vegas. I mean, who knows what he's getting into like out there, but thank God you are here to help us with value plays.
Well, and he's making money on all the picks that I've made. So, and here's where you're going to make money if you follow suit. Florida's Carter Verhaeghe playing left wing minutes on the top line, $4,400, producing 9 points and 29 shots in his last 10 games played. Dallas left winger Denis Gurianov for $3,700 has a great matchup against Montreal while playing alongside Sagan and Ben, who are again reunited and newly motivated to play together. And it was mentioned earlier by Pete, Corey Perry riding shotgun with Point and Kucherov and producing 8 points in his last 10 games. I think I could do that. And he costs only $2,900 in this spot. I mentioned the Islanders' favorable matchup against Philly and find that Kiefer Bellows has been moved up to the right wing spot alongside Barzal right now. And Bellows, for his part, earned that promotion on the strength of 5 points while playing limited minutes in his last 7 games and could see more time with this promotion while costing only $2,700 against the Woeful Flyers tonight.
Pete, where are you going for some value, dude?
So I mentioned Elias Pettersson. Check DraftKings. He is actually wing eligible. So DraftKings right on the ball as usual. Nice. Eric Howla is a great value center. If you're looking to spend up elsewhere, he's playing with David Pasternak and Taylor Hall, 2 real high caliber wingers. And yeah, Howla's got at least a point in 7 of his past 8 games. So I love that exposure to the Bruins, who are one of the hottest teams in the league right now. If you want to get exposure to the Bruins, but you don't have room at center, go with their new rookie defenseman standout, Urho Vakanainen, 2,500 DraftKings minimum, 4 assists in his first 5 games of the season and playing nearly 20 minutes a game. So you got to love that.
All right. Also got to love you too. The Killer Peas. Who knows if AJ is even alive still. He'll ever join us again. We'll find out maybe later this week. Pete, Paul, love you guys. Your job here is done. Gary and Matt, they have a job to do, helping you with some NBA best bets after this. A dozen games on MLK Day, followed by a teeny tiny 2-game slate on Tuesday. We got a 2-man panel here to share their best bets. DraftKings contributors, Gary and Thorne and Matt Meiselman. Good to see you guys. So let's start with DFS, though. So who's the best bet in DFS to have the most DK fantasy points tonight, Gary?
Yeah, not a ton of options, but I would say Karl Anthony Towns is probably the safest play. Up above 9K on this slate, so it stands to reason he's probably going to score the most DraftKings points. Not an ideal matchup against the Knicks, although the front court a little bit weaker if Nerlens Noel doesn't play in this game. He's been out the last couple, nursing a knee injury, but Towns has just been really, really good. He's been his usual self. His past 10 starts, he's averaging 1.43 DraftKings points per minute played, and that volume could get pretty crazy tonight. I mean, I think this is probably the more competitive game, especially if you're just looking at the spreads on the DraftKings Sportsbook. And Towns has played some serious minutes the last 2 times Minnesota has had a quote-unquote competitive game. He's been up over 39 minutes played in those 2 games. So if he gets anywhere around 37, 38, 39 minutes, I just don't think there's anyone catching him tonight.
Who is going to score the most DK fantasy points, you think, tonight, Matt?
To me, there's one really, really important variable that will dictate who's going to be the top scorer, and that's if the Pistons can score enough to force Steph Curry to actually have to play his normal minutes and to have to play the fourth quarter. The one thing that's clear to me is that Julius Randle is the safest per dollar because he's much cheaper than Curry and Towns. So in terms of fitting a guy in your lineup, I think Randle makes more sense. So the guy I most want to roster here, if we're really trying to get into this question, I think Randle for cash games. Randle might even be a better GPP play. There's so much savings there, but there's a chance that if the Warriors' defense isn't that good, there's no Draymond, Gary Payton's hurt, may not play. The Warriors' defense may continue to have problems like it's been happening in recent games. And in that scenario, Curry's upside is huge because the major concern for him is they're 15-point favorites and you might have a blowout. So Randle to me is safe, but Curry I think has a chance to really blow up the slate if the game does stay close there.
All right, Matt, let's go ahead and make our way to the DK Sportsbook now because this segment is called Best Bet. So your favorite player prop tonight is what?
I don't have a lot that I like tonight, but this Warriors game staying close does open up a lot. And Kevon Looney hasn't gotten the minutes that he had originally gotten when Draymond first went out. And the reason for that is none of the Warriors games have been staying close lately. I think they've had 3 blowouts now in a row. They've been on both sides of blowouts, actually. If the Warriors are in the game against the Pistons, which is a big if, Kevon Looney has a points, rebounds, and assists line at 16.5. He's probably playing close to 30 minutes because the reasons why he doesn't play are really 2 things. The game's not close and they just play the younger players, or they're trying to come back and they need 3-point shooting and he doesn't really fit into that. With Draymond out, if you have a relatively close game, I think that Looney is the guy that the Warriors want to play at center. And the Pistons aren't a small team. I mean, they do have some decent big men who are at least they're large enough where you maybe want to have a center out there. They're not a small ball type of team. So I think Looney could play a little bit more than he's been playing, and for that reason, I think his props look good.
All right, Garion, like a player prop tonight on the DK Sportsbook?
Yeah, I mean, Matt's brought up twice now the variance that could be possible in this Golden State game, depending on how this script plays out. One guy who we pretty much know exactly what his role is going to be is Klay Thompson. He's going to play somewhere between 20 to 24 minutes tonight, regardless of how much the Warriors are winning or losing by. And I mean, the Warriors are really trying to maximize his minutes right now. He's got a usage rate around 35%. And because of that, he's actually making a career high 5.8 3-pointers per 100 possessions. So he's been pretty efficient behind the line, even if he's not shooting quite to the level we've seen Klay shoot in the past. But his 3-pointers made prop tonight is 2.5. It's plus money to the over. We have been seeing his minutes trickle. I don't want to say massive jumps or anything like that, but maybe he plays 23.5, 24 minutes tonight with a 35% usage rate. We've already seen him take at least 7 3-pointers in 3 of the 4 games he's been active for. Klay just has to have an average Klay shooting night to get 3 3-pointers. So I think at plus money, that's a pretty good prop.
All right, Gary, in Minnesota at the Garden, second half of back-to-back for the Knicks. They are 3-point underdogs. How do you see this one playing out here?
I feel like this will end up being a popular side, and that makes me a little nervous, but there's a lot of reasons to just like the Timberwolves here. The Knicks have been one of the worst home court teams in the NBA in terms of covering the spread. Minnesota's been fantastic on the road. They've actually covered 7 of their last 9 games as a road favorite. They've just been covering a lot lately, and that's because in January, they have the 3rd best net rating in the NBA. They're outscoring teams by over 9 points per 100 possessions. Knicks on the second night of a back-to-back, although it's kind of a weird augmented back-to-back with that game tipping off so early yesterday. So I feel like there's going to be a lot of action in the Timberwolves. I'll be a lemming here and say the Timberwolves do come out on top here tonight.
I mean, the Timberwolves here, Matty, do have some rest advantage and are playing some of their best basketball of the season right now.
Yeah, definitely. I do think that all of that has been factored into the line at this point, though, because the opening spread for this game was only about 1, and we already are seeing it at 3. So all of those contextual factors, I just feel like that's the reason the line has moved. And now we have a line that's basically fair. The one thing that could change how this game looks is if Kemba Walker plays. So as it stands, I'm probably leaning Minnesota. I'm probably with Garion. But if Kemba comes back tonight, I actually think this line will go back the other way. And I kind of like the Knicks at +3, only if Kemba's playing. So without him, I think maybe the Wolves should be favored by 3, 3.5, 4, something like that. I have a slight lean there, but I'm actually pretty interested in the Knicks if they do get Kemba back in the lineup.
All right, well, last one here, Maddie. Warriors return home after an ugly 1-3 road trip. Draymond Green, he remains on the injury report, but Steph Curry does not. A big spread here, 15.5 points on the DraftKings Sportsbook. What are you looking to bet in this one?
Do I have to bet anything in this game?
No, you don't. You absolutely do not. No. So it's a stay away spot for you then.
I think it probably is, but Gary Payton II, I'm just going to bring him up. I think this is a good opportunity to just talk about him again. I think that you actually could argue that Gary Payton is in contention for the second best player on the Golden State Warriors when healthy. Like, Draymond is good. Obviously, Curry's their best player. Draymond's good. I think Payton is as good defensively as Draymond. He's questionable, so we already know Draymond's out. If Payton's not playing, I do think this game has a legitimate chance of staying close because I don't think the Warriors are the same defensive team when you take Green and Payton, who has low-key been unbelievably good on defense this year. You take both of those guys out, we saw what happened. They just lost by 20 to Minnesota, and they've had some other bad games recently too. So if he's not playing, I will reluctantly go with Detroit plus 15.5, but I really want Payton to be out of the lineup so that this game has a better shot to stay close.
I mean, Gary, and much like the Timberwolves here, the Pistons were playing some of their best basketball this season before getting humbled by the Suns on Sunday.
Yeah, it's a low bar. They are 5-4 in their last 9 games, but
there you go.
Second worst net rating in basketball across that 9-game span. So it is an interesting mix. It seems like either the Pistons hang tough in about half their games or they get absolutely blown out in their other games. Yeah, I don't really have a strong lean here. I would say that when push comes to shove, I'd just take the points with the way Golden State's been playing without Draymond Green the past week and a half. The under is sort of interesting in the sense that both of these teams in the month of January have bottom 5 offensive ratings. I think we focus so much on how much Golden State loses defensively without Draymond Green, but he's also just essentially their point guard. But at the same time, like Matt was saying, if there's no Draymond, if there's no Gary Payton II, that's the 2 best defenders on Golden State being absent. And now you're asking a team to, maintain an under, which I don't think Detroit is necessarily an offensive team that I fear all that much. I think this total is a little inflated, but yeah, I would say soft lean to Detroit in the points, soft lean to the under, but I feel more confident about just betting Minnesota, if we're being honest.
Yeah, Pistons never stood a chance, guys, without Kelly, the Clinic, Olynyk. Let's be real. Thank you. Both of you were fantastic today, as always. Back to the NFL we go to look at some divisional round spreads and totals right after this. All right, it's time to take a gander at some NFL divisional round spreads and totals and decide if they're too high, too long, or too low, too short. DraftKings contributors Reed T. Fowler and Jeff Ulrich. What an absolute pleasure it is to have you here on our screens. Guys, the Bengals just barely beating your Raiders, Reed, and now head to Tennessee as just 3-point underdogs. Is that spread a little too low, Fowler? I mean, maybe there'll be no phantom whistles this time.
Don't get me started. I'm sure we'll get into it on Wednesday's Slate show because there's some stuff to talk about. But I digress. I think this is fine right now. Right? I think it's a little high. I just take a look at what Cincinnati can do. And I know Jeff's going to mention how Tennessee is going to win the Super Bowl, so he's going to say this is way too low. But you're looking at a Cincinnati team that is able to score in bunches and score quickly, right? The one thing that scares me, and I'm sure Jeff, again, is going to talk about this, Tennessee is the number one run blocking offense in DVOA on footballoutsiders.com. And Cincy's run defense is kind of middle of the pack, they're a little suspect against Josh Jacobs, right? 13, I think he averaged about 6.8 yards per attempt. That does scare me. Tennessee should beat Cincinnati if they stick to that game plan of running the ball and then also featuring a guy like A.J. Brown going against Eli Apple. And that is a mismatch, and a match made in heaven for Tennessee. So I'll say it's a little high right now, but I can see why it's creeping up.
All right, Jeff, go ahead. Defend your Titans here because I know that was your preseason bet.
Reed is so wrong. All I was going to say is that I saw an interesting tweet the other day about Nick Foles having more playoff wins than Derek Carr. That's all I was going to say. But, as far as this game goes, I will say that like the Titans are getting a little bit disrespected here, but I don't think this line should be egregiously higher. I mean, even at 4, you have to give the Bengals some respect here just because of the quality of the offense. And look, the Titans, I like them as a team. I do think they're going to win this game, and it's mainly going to be because of their defense, which is getting a higher turnover rate, a higher pressure rate. And I think that Joe Burrow still just, one bad throw a game kind of thing. And that could be the difference. And Reed brings up a good point about A.J. Brown. But the Titans are also a team who, they lost to the Steelers 4 weeks ago. I mean, they very close games against like Houston and San Francisco. So I don't think that the Bengals should be any bigger than 4-point underdogs here. It's a little bit low for me at -3. I would definitely side with the Titans. I shouldn't say probably. I would definitely side with the Titans, but I don't think that this line is egregious or anything. I think these two teams are still close. I just feel like the Titans, with the consistency they've shown on defense of late, they deserve to be slightly bigger favorites.
Reed, it's now 3.5 on the DK Sportsbook. Does that change anything for you?
Oh, that's what I was talking about. At 3.5, right? You kind of have to side with Cincinnati. Look, this is a Cinderella team, and we see this all the time. We see this with the Packers, the Giants, with Cincinnati. And look, what Jeff's talking about, I think we take so much stock into what these guys do in the regular season and not what they're doing or the foundational, pieces that they have in the playoffs. And Tennessee, look, Mike Vrabel is a fantastic coach, but you also got to give, a lot of credit to what Joe Burrow and what these guys are doing. Yes, they're young, and yes, they probably got a little lucky last week in terms of how they're able to do it. But at the same time, like I think you can probably wait if you want to take Cincinnati. You want to take Tennessee. Wait until the market kind of adjusts and goes back to believing in Cincinnati at 2.5 or 3 even, or 3 or even 2.5 if it gets below that number.
Yeah, Cincinnati is a public team too with Joe Burrow, so I don't think the spread is going to get too high.
And Burrow 4-0, I believe ATS and straight up over his past 4. Jeff, Bills and Chiefs. They both dominated in their games. They put up 40-plus points. Is 55-point game total, is that actually too low?
I wanted to be like curmudgeonly Pierce here and be like, this one's too low. Defenses are good. We got to give them some respect here. It's winter. But, I mean, the Bills are coming off a perfect offensive game. I mean, legitimately, they did not make a mistake against the Patriots, who are a very good defense. So even if the Chiefs win this game, are the Bills going to score less than 24 points? I don't think so. Like, even if the Bills play at 70% of their capacity from last week, it's really tough for me to see the Chiefs defense, which has allowed some big games of late. I mean, 34 points to the Bengals. They even allowed the Steelers to come back and post 21 in a game where like they could have just shut them down. I think there will be opportunity here for whichever offense is trailing to put up points. And I think that's the big factor because the winner here is probably going to need to get to at least 30. So maybe you get stuck at a number like 54 and this one goes under, but I think at 55, it's a little bit too low right now. And I think you'll probably see this creep up to 56.
The Patriots defense was a bunch of frauds, dude. Reed, 55-point game total here. What do you think? Too high, too low?
Patriots team is a bunch of frauds.
Yeah, there he is. There he is.
We were saying it all along. Like, who did they play? Anyway, they're not in the playoffs. Let's stop talking about them because they don't matter right now. Like 50, Jeff saying 55 is too low is crazy. But Jeff's par for the course is crazy. So I'm not surprised at all. Look, the over hit in their first matchup this season, and that was set at 56.5.
Last year in the AFC Championship game too, Reed.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, this is the last thing the Bills want to do, right, with the Chiefs, and vice versa, is get into a shootout, because then it gets to the point where, you can't really control your destiny. It probably comes down to whoever has the ball last. I do think what's interesting about that last matchup, guys, is that Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes had really good games on the ground. Allen, of course, had 11 for 59, but Mahomes had 8 for 61. So I'm not saying that that's going to be the focal point of their offense, but I will say that both of these defenses has gotten a lot better since the last time these two teams met. And to what Jeff has been saying at nauseum is that they finally have a run game in Devin Singletary. So why go away from that? Everything went perfect for the Bills, like you mentioned, Emerson, and the Chiefs really put up a really good performance. And so you're getting this, I think, at the very top of the market. Jeff mentioned it. If it's at 54, 53, that's kind of where I see this game coming, because neither of these teams want to get into a shootout with the other team.
I mean, it's a healthy line for sure. And the Chiefs have hit the over in 6 straight games. Bills have hit the over in 5 of their last 7 games on the road.
And to Emerson, sorry to cut you off, though. Bills, though, and again, I'm probably, contradicting my point here. 3-0 hitting the over when the lines closed at 50 or over. And Kansas City is 7-4-1 in those matchups where the total has been over 50. So take that for what it's worth, too. But again, those are regular season numbers.
First NFL playoff game ever where both quarterbacks threw for 5 touchdowns in the previous round. Let's go to the NFC. Packers 6-point favorites. Packers only beat the Niners here as they welcome in the 49ers by 2 back in week 3. So is this too high, Reed?
Yeah. And what's this hate with San Francisco? Pierce and his curmudgeon self, when I was watching that first part of the segment, saying that this is not a good team and they got lucky. Like, San Francisco put up 3 field goals in the first half that could easily have been touchdowns. And Dallas was only in that game because they got lucky on a call, right? So with the fact that San Francisco is getting a little bit disrespected in this market is the reason why I think this is too high. Like, the Packers are 7-3 ATS in their last 10 playoff games, but the 49ers are 4-0 ATS, guys, in their last 4 divisional playoff games. So when you take a look at what they're able to do, and when you have a running back like Eli Mitchell, boy, this guy was a steal, feeling like the steal of the draft right now in the later rounds. When you can have that type of player in the running game, and Deebo Samuel has had 5 times more attempts in last week's game as opposed to the first time these two teams match up, guess what Green Bay can't do well? They cannot defend the run whatsoever. And Jimmy Garoppolo is a player that, and sorry to contradict Steve as well, it's a guy who's come back against teams like the Green Bay defense. He did it against the Rams to go into the playoffs. They were down 17-0 going into the second half. So what these guys are saying in the first segment was absolute cockamamie. And you take a look at what the San Francisco team can do, I think this is too low, or excuse me, too high.
Yeah, 49ers have dominated Green Bay with the run in previous seasons and could do so again. Jeff, Aaron Rodgers 0-3 in the playoffs in his career against San Francisco. San Fran, his kryptonite.
They have put some beatings down on the Packers. I really worry this is like the game where we all just like San Francisco's getting disrespected, and then the Packers just blow out the 49ers. I actually don't think this line is too high. I think that it should be like 5.5 was fine. At 6, you start to wonder. If it got over 6, I definitely say it was too high. I think the Packers are the best team in the NFL, and I've thought that since the start. I think they're far more consistent and complete. They've shored up their secondary. They're getting Darius Smith back for this game. Who in the San Francisco secondary is going to stop Davante Adams? That's the question for me, and that's what really has me wondering why we think this one's too high. I don't think it is too high. I think it's right where it should be. Now, at the same time, I mean, if I think it's right where it should be, it's not like I'm running out of my way to bet the Green Bay Packers, because everything Reed said is right. This San Francisco offense is very good at coming back. They will continue to move the ball regardless of the score. But I think this line is fine. I'm just not sure if I necessarily want to take it with the Packers yet. So this is just like one where I'm going to give like the boring answer and say this one's probably right where it should be. Maybe you don't go out of your way to like bet the heavy public favorite Packers, but I'm going to give the Green Bay some credit here, because all I've heard this week is San Francisco is going to make this game close. They've been the far less consistent team of these two, and the Packers are coming off a week of rest with the far better quarterback. So I'm going to say this one's just right.
Yeah, and I also mentioned earlier in the show with Stephen Pierce too that the health of Nick Bosa is going to be absolutely crucial in this game, because less pressure on Rodgers. Yes, he can pick apart that secondary, which you mentioned, Jeff, is the weakest part of that 49ers defense. Rams and Bucks, though, both rolling their wild card matchups. Total set at 48.5. So bookmakers here don't expect each offense to put up 30 plus again. Is this total too high or too low, Jeff?
I mean, I don't know how you look at a Tampa Bay Buccaneers game with a 48.5 total going up against another offense in the Rams, who we just saw put up 30 points against a supposedly a playoff average defense in Arizona, and you don't take the over. I have no case to take the under in this game. We're not even like in a Green Bay setting where we can sit here and say, well, the weather might be a factor. It's probably not going to be a factor because we're in Florida. So yeah, 48.5 with the Rams and the Bucks. I mean, I personally still think the Rams are a team is very gettable, and we know the Bucks are going to be throwing the ball regardless of score here. So I will take the over here. I think 48.5. Again, you'll probably see this one creep up as the week goes on.
All right, Reed, what do you think here? Dude, they squared off back in week 3 in LA, and Rams were able to pull out the 34-24 win.
Yeah, I just like to call up the receipts from last week where Jeff verbally accosted me about taking the Rams over the Cardinals, and it was an absolute embarrassment for Jeff. Yep. So I appreciate the two shots.
I went 2-3 last week, fully admitted on the show, but the 3 losses I had were
Steelers,
Pittsburgh, Philly, and Arizona. And it feels like I went about 0-10 because those teams lost by 30 points. So
we're not even counting Russell Henley.
Yes, exactly. Thank you very much.
Better just watch it there, pal. Okay?
Yeah, we'll get to that in a little bit. But again, the case to be made, Jeff, is the Rams are 2-4 hitting the over when they're outside or not in a dome. But I do like the over with you as well, because I like to take a look at this Rams offense, and it matches up fairly decently against this defense. But Emerson, you mentioned in that first block, if Whitworth is not there, that scares you quite a bit, because he is a focal point not just of that offensive line, but the leader in that offensive line as well. So that does scare you a little bit. But even then, I like attacking the Bucks team total as well at 25.5. They've gone over this number fairly easily since week 12. And the Rams defense, this is why Jeff liked the Cardinals so much. They're a little bit banged up in the secondary. And again, this whole idea that the Bucks don't have anybody on offense to throw to. Mike Evans just caught 1,000 passes for 1,000 yards last week.
Again, one of my worst calls last week.
It's completely fine. So I like this one to go over as well.
Well, guys, while the Rams leave LA and head to Florida this weekend, the PGA Tour is calling the region home this week for the American Express. Hell of a segue. Let's chase your fade some stuff there on the links. Yeah, that's right, Jeff. That's how you host a show.
You absolutely nailed it.
Jon Rahm taking home second place in the Century Tournament of Champions a couple weeks ago. So he's plus 500 to win. And the top priced dude in DFS, 11-3. Chase your fade for me here, Reed. Rahm should be the favorite, but you're not betting or playing him in DFS because of the high cost.
Yeah, Chase. I will say, though, that this tournament, well, I'll tell you the caveat, like 80% Chase, 20% fade, because in this type of tournament, when you get 3 rounds, I think you got to be a little bit contrarian in your roster build for DFS. At 500, plus 500 on the odds. I mean, you look at the average odds of the winners here, they're in the triple digits, right? It's just that's a matter of trends, going towards the longer shots in this matchup, because you have a course that lends itself to every type of golfer. Having said that, though, on the DFS side, I think you have to take one of these top 4 guys in the $10,000 and above range. And maybe even 2, because you can get those longer shots in your lineup, and you're getting 3 rounds. Jon Rahm, by any statistical measure, weighted stats, whatever you want to call it. He is number one in the field, and Patrick Cantley is number two. And it's like them two. And then to number three, it's a far cry. So I like chasing one of these top few guys. And so I don't mind if you wanted to put one lineup out of 10 with Rom in it, because you can fit two of these guys probably because of the type of tournament we have this week.
So Jeff, chase or fade that Rom should be the favorite, but you're not going to bet him or play him because of the high price.
No, I'm going to fade that because, I mean, I definitely think you should play him in DFS. I think there's a bit of a disconnect between his outright odds and the DFS price. Like at 11-3, you've got guys like Scheffler, Finau, Sung J M. I mean, look, they're quality players, but like they're not in John Rahm's class, and John Rahm shouldn't be within like $1,000 of these players in this field. John Rahm came out off the rest, just about won the Tournament of Champions, didn't even look like he was trying. And now he comes to this event like with the good start under his belt at 11-3. I mean, I feel like you should be 12,000 in this field, right? I mean, it's still not a strong field. It's just that like we have Cantley to prop it up a little bit under him. And yeah, like Cantley's fine too. I think Cantley, you could almost make a case a little bit underpriced, but I think John Rahm is more underpriced. And I think that DFS wise, you should be starting there and looking to take advantage of people who are trying to build, more balanced lineups. I don't think John Rahm will be like not owned this week. He could actually end up being one of the most popular golfers, and I think that could be the case. But the outright department, yeah, you can certainly fade him there. Reed and I always bring this up. Plus 500. It just when you get to these odds on the PGA Tour, it just there's so much variance, and especially in an event like this where we have seen long shot winners. That if he was plus 900 or even 800, I'd probably make a case for it, but not a plus 500. It's just too short.
Last year's runner-up in the American Express is Patrick Cantley. It's right behind Rom on the sports book and in DFS pricing. So you chasing or fading him this week, Jeff?
Yeah, I'm going to actually fade it. Again, Cantley came out and had a great week at Maui, but you have to pick and choose here. Like playing Rom and Cantley probably isn't really something you can do in a lineup. You could go. I mean, it's super contrarian, but I'll fade him just because I'll say, I think Rahm is the better play. At 10,900, I would much rather just pay up to get to John Rahm, who is still the number one player in the world, and I still think is objectively better than Cantley, although I think that the gap between them is now smaller than it has been in the past. But, we're only getting a $400 difference between them, and that's the big thing for DFS. For outright betting, again, Cantley under 1,000 now. It's probably just a little bit too short. I think that there's enough talent in the plus 2,000 and plus 3,000 range that you should be taking a couple shots there than necessarily paying down. But Cantley's fine. If you're not going to start with John Rahm, or you just think I'm an idiot and Cantley is a better player, then starting with him at 10.9 is fine, because I actually think he's a little bit underpriced too. I think he should be at least a couple $100 more. But I'll say fade this question because I like Rahm better.
What are you doing here, Reed?
Yeah, I'll go on the other side, and I'll chase Patrick Cantley because if you take a look at what he did last year at this tournament, he shot a 61 on Sunday, and he almost caught Siwoo Kim there. And it was just fantastic to watch Cantley go on this course. And if you take a look at how the prices are structured, once you get down below 7,000 or 8,000, right, Jeff and Emerson, it's terrible. It's not, you don't really have a lot of, that's terrible. You don't have a lot of confidence with that. I really like a lot of the guys in the $8,000 range, and that $400 can save you quite a bit. You can go to Jeff's boy, Christian Bezuidenhout, and as opposed to someone like a Ricky Fowler, who I think does present some value, but I much rather want Seabez as opposed to Ricky in this type of matchup, because Ricky's probably getting ready for the next couple of weeks, right? Which are tournaments that he really, really loves. So I'll chase Cantley.
All right, guys, we got less than 2 minutes to go in the show. Let's get to Russell Henley here real quick, because last week he fell to Matsuyama in a playoff, the Sony Open. It wasn't really a collapse. He just couldn't really birdie anything on the back nine. But at $9,000 and plus 3,500, you chasing Henley this week to have another good performance, Jeff. He was your guy. You were so close to nailing this.
He choked.
Yeah, he close to back-to-back winners in Hawaii. But you're onto something, Emerson. I know I've always liked you. It really wasn't a collapse, and I think that's the big thing. I'm not sure if there's going to be a big mental hurdle here. He just couldn't sink a 14-footer over his last 8 holes of the tournament, and obviously, stuck it in the bunker on the par 5. But realistically, he got beat by an elite player in Hideki Matsuyama. I think Henley will come out of this actually pretty well, and I think at 9,000, this setup is just like last week. I mean, it favors players with hot irons and can get going with the putter. If Henley can bring the putter again and sink those mid-range birdies for most of the event, I don't see another reason why he won't just bounce back quickly here. I think that he's a good play. I actually think he's a good bet. His odds here are actually bigger on DraftKings than they were last week. So again, if you can, all it is just getting over the mental hurdle block here. And if you think he can bounce back here, you're getting better odds to take a shot. So I'm definitely chasing this for at least one more week. You'll see him break through eventually, but there's obviously a little bit more variance involved here just with everything that went on last Sunday.
All right, we have 20 seconds, Reed. You have 5 seconds for your answer.
No, do it. Russell Henley has missed the cut 4 years for like 4 times here in his last 4 events. No, don't do that. Chase Tony Finau, who plays really good on course locations.
There he is. All right, we're going to talk a bunch more golf tomorrow here on the Sweat, and 5 o'clock tomorrow, Wednesday, hump day, the slate, us three, the 3 bro migos. That's a show, everybody. Thanks for hanging with us on this Tuesday.